Get in on the secret. September is one of the best times to visit the Boardwalk Plaza Hotel in Rehoboth Beach. The weather is grand, and just steps from the sand, you can relax and experience the convenience of their oceanfront location right on the Rehoboth Beach Boardwalk. Enjoy Victoria's Restaurant, the charming Plaza Pub and room service. Visit boardwalkplaza.com and book your perfect getaway today, or call 800-33-BEACH for fast, friendly assistance. Thanks to the Boardwalk Plaza for being the Bridge Podcast Network sponsor.
Hey, if you've ever wondered why do Christians believe in a God they can't see, you've found the right podcast. I'm Mark Dickey.
And I'm Burt Miller.
And this is the Why Do Christians podcast. Well, welcome to the show. My name's Mark Dickey. I host a daily afternoon show on a Christian radio station in Delaware called The Bridge. My co-host is Burt Miller. I should say Pastor Burt Miller. He's the lead pastor at Solid Ground Church in Lewis, Delaware. Burt, how you doing today?
Mark Valvoline Dickey. I'm doing so well. So well. So thrilled to be here with you, my friend.
That's my new favorite one.
Thank you. I thought of it in the car on the way over here.
Did you pass a gas station or something when you thought of that?
I passed several. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we love to answer questions that come in. We always, in every episode, give out the email podcast@wearethebridge.org. If you have a question, why do Christians do this? Like, I don't understand. We love to hear it. Email your questions to podcast@wearethebridge.org. So, Burt, today we are talking about why do Christians believe in a God they can't see?
Yes.
And I can't help but think about the 1999 classic, The Mummy.
Go on. Brendan Fraser?
Yeah.
Okay. Fraser, not Fraser. Fraser.
Fraser.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I always want to say Fraser. That's not right.
Brendan Fraser.
Yeah.
Huh. You just rocked my world.
Wow. Man, we're not even into the questions yet. Go on.
Well, I just remember it's a really subtle line, but at the beginning of the movie, her name is Evie, the female lead in the movie.
Not Brendan Fraser.
Not Brendan Fraser.
Yes.
She's an archaeologist or whatever, or whatever. Every archaeologist is going to write in now.
We respect your field. Please.
But she doesn't believe in mummies. She says, if I can see it and I can touch it, then it's real. And I'm just reminded of that line when I hear the phrase, why do Christians believe in a God that they can't see?
Yeah. It kind of feels like that's interesting, right? It's a very specific scope, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like I've heard the pushback. It's sort of juvenile to believe in a big man in the sky who like exists up there that we can't see. It's immature. Yeah.
It's like it reminds me of honestly like conversations that I've had, or people are like, "Wow, it's really convenient that you believe in this thing that you can't see." It's kind of like the guy who's like, "Yeah, I have a girlfriend. She goes to another school
right. in Canada." Yeah. But the interesting thing though, man. I think maybe just the first way, like before we even answer, like, hey, why do we believe in said God? The first thing to recognize with that kind of attitude is that it's a false belief about what everyone believes. That is to say, okay, that Christians believe in this sort of invisible entity for whom there's no evidence, but nobody else believes in things that they can't see.
Ooh,
right?
Yeah.
So, think about there's the old Billy Graham adage where he says, the person says, do you believe in God? Can you say you've seen him? He says, I've never seen the wind. I've seen the effects of the wind, but I've never seen the wind. Christians like to use that as this kind of gotcha. But that's a very, very, I'm not quite sure that illustration is apt. But even if you're just sort of take a viewpoint of, the nature of existence and just you're looking out at the cosmos, you're seeing the universe, you still believe in things that you can't see. I'm willing to bet. So let's say you go full atheist and you say, there absolutely is no God. Well, do you have evidence for that? Well, yeah, I don't see anything. Well, okay, but you're approaching that with a worldview that demands certain things about the universe, right? And so you're taking for granted some things that maybe not everybody would take for granted. It's just as much a leap of faith to say that there is no God when, have you looked to the sky and seen the empty chair? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
No, you're surmising things based on effects in the same way Christians would. And actually, what I'm excited about today is to look at some things in the universe that I think clearly point to the existence of God, where others might not interpret them that way. So I think it is a lot of it interpreted. But beyond that, the truth is many people, they believe just what they want to believe, evidence or not. So I'll give you an example. So probably the most famous astrophysicist in the world right now is Neil deGrasse Tyson, right? I mean, like he's the guy. He's on late night talk shows. He's writing books. He's doing all these things. And do you know that he believes in and has advocated several times what's called the simulation hypothesis?
What?
Yeah, right. He believes that we are living in the Matrix. That essentially, like we're living like we're in a computer or aliens, sort of mode of existence where nothing's real. And in fact, he is even quoted as saying, "It's hard to argue that we aren't living in a Matrix." In other words, if we're taking all the probabilities of there being a Matrix, well, how do you do that? But okay, is there any evidence for that? No, but he's believing it. And it's one of these things where when we say, okay, listen, we believe in stuff that we don't see. I think everybody does that. Mm-hmm. Like that's not a Christian thing. That's a humanity thing.
I mean, my immediate response to someone believing that is, what are the correlations between what I believe and what he believes? We both obviously see that the place that we're living in and existing in is created because there's so much order.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But then you start to, if you go with the simulation theory, mm-hmm. if you go with that, then it's like, well, then who created that world that we're escaping from?
Yeah.
And it's just a never-ending cycle.
Absolutely. Well, that's the problem with what's called pantheism, which is, multiple gods. If you believe in multiple gods, you still have to take them back to a supreme God who made them. Mm-hmm. Right? So, yeah, I had a friend who years ago told me that he believed that life on Earth began by a rock crashing into the planet with alien goo on it. Well, okay, but where did the alien goo come from? Like, mm-hmm. There's no explanation in that. It's just it's a pacifying. Maybe the reasoning for that is rejecting religion or what have you, but it comes down to everybody's making a leap of faith somewhere. Now to the question of, okay, well, listen, we can take it from this avenue. Some people might say, okay, why do you believe in a God? Like, if God really cares about us, if he wants us to know him and wants us to follow him, if he wants to sort of be the king or what have you of our lives, why is he invisible? Why doesn't he just sort of sit and, I think it was Carl Sagan said, like, why doesn't he just etch a cross in the moon or demand, like, sort of unveil the clouds and say, I am God? And
why doesn't he come visit every once in a while?
Yeah. And I mean, the Christian response would be that he's here, like, through the person of the Holy Spirit. But I think when we look at it through those filters, we're not necessarily approaching it with the right expectations. Here's what I mean. We think that it's on God to prove his existence, and we don't quite understand the nature of life. We think that God is he's throwing in his bid among other gods and hoping that we get it right. And I don't think that's necessarily the God of the Bible. Certainly he battles with idolatry, but for very different reasons. So here's what I'm getting at. So there's this great story in the book of Acts where the Apostle Paul, he goes and he visits this place called Mars Hill. And Mars Hill is basically, it's a public square, and there's a place called the Areopagus. And what would happen is people would get together and they'd have philosophers stand up and they'd spout out their latest ideas about life and existence and stuff like that. It's this public venue where people can share beliefs. And so Paul gets up there. He starts talking with them about, they're Romans. They're believing in all kinds of different gods, and he begins to talk with them about the God that he believes in. And he says this thing in Acts. This is Acts 17, starting verse 24. He says, "The God who made the world and everything in it is the Lord of heaven and earth, and does not live in temples built by human hands." Okay, so first of all, with this idea of the actress of the Mummy, where I don't. If I can't touch it, well, the problem is your scope is too small. Because if we're saying, like, listen, God is bigger than all of it, how would I expect to be able to touch and confine God to my personal experience here, right? But he continues. He says, and he is not served by human hands as if he needed anything. Rather, he himself gives everyone life and breath and everything else. From one man he made all the nations that they should inhabit the whole earth, and he marked out their appointed times in history and the boundaries of their lands. And so he's talking about how God has been guiding humanity and guiding history. Like, we exist because there's a God, which is incredible. And then he says this thing right here, and this is where I think perhaps our views maybe need to shift a little bit. This is in verse 27. He says, God did this. Okay, so why did God make us? Why are we here? Like, why is there an earth? Why are people walking on the planet? God did this so that they would seek him and perhaps reach out for him and find him, though he's not far from any of us. And that's it right there. Okay, why is God here? Why is God not visible? And the answer is because in the grasping we seek relationship. In other words, there's just, I would say this may be a divine mystery. There's something about what I can't see where I go after God, and there's this relational pursuit in a way where if he's spouting off judgments and decrees at me and thundering down and what have you, it doesn't produce the heart and obedience and relationship that he desires. I mean, biblically, this is, you see this over and over again. You think about the Israelites in the wilderness, where when God is on the mountain doing exactly what many of us would like, or many critics would say he should do, like unveil, do this, don't do that. People's responses are not to run towards him. They quiver in fear and ask Moses to go on their behalf. Like, unbridled glory of God does not produce heart change. It produces fear because he's big. And so there's this sort of patient, let me veil myself so that you can, like, what of me you can handle so that you'll come to me. And I think that's probably the better viewpoint. That it's not about God proving anything to anyone. It's a measure of grace and patience. And that's, I think, kind of beautiful. But then, if we look at this and we say, okay, well, listen, if he wants relationship, why doesn't he make himself more obvious within what we know, right? And again, it's one of the things where I think that's interpretive framework. So I love, Paul writes this in Romans 1:20. He says, for since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature, listen to this, have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse. In other words, Paul is saying, listen, there is so much of God's nature and who he is, and you just look at the world, you look at the universe, and it's one of the things I love about getting to this podcast together is we get to ask questions. And it turns out, like, the God who made our brains has made it so that we can see him in creation. And so, that statement there of, hey, listen, the glory of God has been revealed in creation. You can know who he is. You can know what he's like. If you just simply look out there, question, sort of comes to mind, well, is that true? Right? And so there are some things I think just baseline science, I think they point to the existence of a God. I think they're really good evidence for it. Now, look, I'm not a scientist. I'm a minister. And so I want to just source where I'm getting this from. There's two books that I think are great reads. And they're both by a guy named Lee Strobel. One's called The Case for a Creator. The other is called The Case for Miracles. The thing I love that Strobel does is he's going around, he's interviewing different scientists. He's interviewing different physicists. He's interviewing like all kinds of folks. And so that's where I'm getting a lot of this stuff from. So if we were to like look at the universe and say, all right, is there anything that it tells us about God? I think once you see it, you can't unsee it. So I'll give you an example, right? What's the prevailing belief right now, Christian and non, is that the universe had a beginning, right? Whether you, if you're a literal six-day creationist, most literal six-day creationists that I know would say, all right, there's a gap between Genesis 1:1 and 1:2, where it says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, right? And then it says, the earth was formless and void, and darkness hovered over the surface of the deep. And so what most literal six-day creationists are going to say is, all right, the creation that it's talking about there is the creation of the earth, but there's a gap of time between the two, right? And this is how you account for the rise and fall of Satan and the angels in heaven, why you have this fallen angel in the garden in Genesis 2. Is that, okay, there's a span of time there. But beyond that, if you go to a secular viewpoint and you say like, no, I'm not going to be interested in the Bible whatsoever, you're probably going to believe in what's called Big Bang, right? That the universe in a moment exploded into existence from something about the size of a person's finger, that it all just went outward, and they've the neat part is that they can kind of quantify that. They can see that the universe is expanding. I don't think this contradicts the Bible, because I have no problem putting Big Bang within those first two verses of Genesis. But again, regardless of if that's not where you're there, you're still going to say the universe had a beginning. Now, this is important, okay, because we haven't always believed that. Carl Sagan, who I mentioned earlier, he used to say this thing. He would say the cosmos are all that there are and all that there was and all that there ever will be. And he believed in an eternal universe. Well, we know factually that's inaccurate. Okay, so if the universe had a beginning, you have to take that back to first causes. If it has a beginning, there has to be a beginner. There has to be something that makes it come into existence. Okay, but it's not just that. Like if we're looking at the universe, one of my favorite things to talk about when it comes to the existence of God. So it's called the fine-tuned argument. Have you heard about this? Fine-tuned argument. Okay. So here's the idea. The idea is that there are specific sets of parameters through which the universe is governed. In other words, there are specific rules within creation for it to function, and if you mess with any of them, the whole thing falls apart. So sort of imagine the universe like it's, we're in a radio studio right now. You have tons of experience with sound. Soundboard, it's got all these dials on it, right? And those little knobs. Okay. Now imagine you had one of those that's like a mile long, okay? Like with tons and tons of like knobs all across it, right? And if you nudged one of them, the entire thing stopped working. Okay. That's this idea of the precision of how the universe operates. And the evidence for it's really good. So for instance, let's talk about what's called the ratio of electromagnetic force to gravitational force. In other words, this has to do with things being pulled together or pushed apart. All right, like this is how this functions. Okay, so here's the thing to understand. Like here's how fine-tuned that ratio is. Okay, are you ready for this number, Mark? It's fine to 1 part in 10,000 trillion. Okay, now let me break down what that's a huge number. Okay, like the odds of it being that specific. All right. So think of it this way. So this and again, this is from Strobel's book, but he interviews an astrophysicist named Hugh Ross. He said, all right, listen, if you want to understand that number, imagine covering 1 billion North American continents with dimes from the ground to the moon. Okay, so 1 billion of them with dimes, that's going 238,000 miles high. Okay. And he goes, now what you do is you choose one dime at random, paint it red, and throw it in the pile. He goes, you know what the odds are that you would find that one dime? 1 part in 10,000 trillion. That's how specific that ratio is when we come to the universe. But it's not just that. You can talk about
Whoa.
Yeah, go on.
My mouth is agape. I had not heard that statistic until this very moment.
Yeah.
My eyes are watering.
Yes.
I'm not crying, but like I know that when my eyes start watering, my mind is just completely blown and just overwhelmed by
it's
how small I am. You ever try to find something in your garage?
Yeah.
Like, all right, we're recording this in July. I know there's a kiddie pool somewhere that we can inflate for my girls. I can't find it, let alone a dime.
In that
1 billion United States?
Yes.
Or North America's,
North America's. Yeah.
Piled high to the moon.
Yes. That one specific. Yes. That's the ratio of electromagnetic force to gravitational force. Okay. So when we say like listen, we just exist. We exist very specifically. I'll give you another example. Okay. So talk about matter. All right. So one of the things that they've talked about is, and again, if we disagree here about Big Bang or not, okay, just grain of salt, set it to the side. You can have fun with your non-Christian friends who believe in it. Okay. I think it's good for where we are, but if we disagree, that's fine. But they say it like this. All right. So the matter needed in the explosion of Big Bang, again, to me, this fits with, God saying, let there be light, and there was light. I've just got no problem with that. But again, we could disagree there. All right. But here's the deal. Okay. The matter needed to have the universe successfully expand has to be precise. Okay. And the reason it has to be precise is this. Okay. Too dense and matter doesn't go outward. The universe isn't formed. It implodes. It collapses back in on itself. But if it's too thin, what ends up happening is, or not enough, not thin, but not enough. Like what happens is, that it would just keep going in ways that things wouldn't be able to coalesce and form. All right. And so here's the deal. Okay. Here's where this is crazy. All right. The precise amount, this is what they've calculated, the precise amount of matter needed, listen to this, okay, in order for the universe to exist in the way that it does, it would need to be 1 part in a trillion. That's more than what we just talked about, okay? All right, and that's essentially that's a 10 with 60 zeros after it. And so here's why this is so big. Just use the word dime, okay? If there were even a dime's worth of extra matter, the universe that we know would not exist. Okay, so we're talking really specific stuff here. All right, and so what happens is this, okay? What happens is people look and they go, oh, it's just here. And yeah, okay, against all odds, we're here. And you have to go, well, hold on. These are very specific things. In the same way, if I were to, if I were to find a house, okay, and I walked inside the house and I saw that, there's furniture inside the house and there's drywall up and there's a fish tank and I can see food in the fish tank that somebody's just fed the fish and there's plumbing, there's all this and there's all that. That's more likely of that house coming into existence by itself than the universe.
Wow.
Okay.
Whew.
And so we what happens is people, they interpret these things through different ways. And this is why I think it was actually it was either Richard Dawkins or Christopher Hitchens who they were asked, which arguments of the existence of God bother you the most? And it was the fine-tuning argument that this isn't a thing of, hey, things just exist. Like, they exist in very specific ways that if you mess with any of them, the whole thing falls apart. Now, I mean, it's, you could pull like a Lloyd Christmas from Dumb and Dumber and say, well, you're telling me there's a chance. I mean, yeah, but you're kind of missing it. Okay? And that's the universe. Hey, well, let's go smaller scale. Let's talk about the Earth. Okay? Like the Earth that we live on. All right? So just something to know about the Earth that we live on is that there have to be specific conditions for us to be here, right? So first of all, like sometimes it'd be easy to look at sort of the vastness of space, the big black sky at night with the stars in it, and go, man, like what a waste. That like we're in this tiny little rock in the middle of all of this. Like, doesn't that just kind of seem like so huge? Well, actually, no. It turns out all of that has function. So if you were here's what I mean. Okay, let's say that you wanted to create an Earth. All right, you would need. First of all, you need the right kind of galaxy for it to exist. And there's 3 kinds of galaxies. There's elliptical, there's spiral, and there's irregular. What you would need for this particular planet to have life on it is you would need a spiral. And you'd need one that only has the right kinds of heavy elements and has the right radiation levels, all this stuff. Wouldn't you know it, the Earth exists in that kind of galaxy. But then let's go on with that. You'd need the right number of stars within that galaxy. And the reason that you need that is because too many stars and planetary orbits will be disturbed. Well, guess what? We have the right amount of stars in our Milky Way galaxy, but then we can continue in terms of the planet's position in the galaxy, all right? And the reason this is important is because, listen, if the planet is too close to the center of the galaxy, there's too much radiation, there's a black hole, it's bad for life. But too far, and you won't have the right heavy elements, so you're not going to have oxygen, you're not going to have carbon, which you kind of need for life, all right? Here's the other crazy part. It needs to be in a specific place in that galaxy for it to be habitable for life. Okay, so now we're zoning in a little bit more. But then within that, you need the right kind of solar system. Okay, so let's talk about the right kind of star and all this stuff, okay? So in order for there to be life, you need what's called a star. The type of star you would need is what's called a Class G star, a sun, which is ours. We have a Class G, okay? And you need to be at a specific point in its age, which, wouldn't you know it, ours just happens to be. And then you would need that planet to be a specific distance from the sun, because if it's too close, everything on the planet burns up. Too far, everything freezes. But then, Mark, we're still not done, because within that specific solar system, you need other kinds of planets, so that what they can do is they can protect the planet where you want life to be from oncoming threats throughout the universe. So, for instance, you'd need a big planet, let's just call it, Jupiter, all right? You would need it to be functioning like a vacuum, pulling away potential catastrophic meteors, all right? And so, look, and wouldn't you know it, the Earth just happens to fit within all of those things. But then we're still not done. We're still not done, man, okay? Here's why this is so big. Let's take the planet itself, all right? you need it to have a specific kind of moon, a large one, which, by the way, we have, and it's rare to have just one large moon, by the way, but we've got the right size moon, and what it does is it stabilizes our planet's tilt. It messes with the seasons, the tides, the whole thing there, and it's going to make it so that the tectonic plates are in the right place to be able to prevent a water world, and also to generate the right kind of magnetic field. Oh, also, you need a specific kind of atmosphere. If it's too thick, it traps in methane, which kills, and if it's thinner, water escapes. And wouldn't you know it, in all of these factors, the Earth stands alone. Okay, now here's why this is so crucial, okay? That's why this is so crucial. Because when we're talking about things, we say, how can you believe in a God that you can't see? I look at that and I go, I can't not see him. You see? Like, again, this is in Strobel's book. He interviews a guy named Michael Strauss, who's a physics professor at the University of Oklahoma. And what he said was this, and this blew my mind. He said there are 332 characteristics needed for life. Okay, like in order for life to exist on the planet, 332 characteristics for life. And can I just read you this thing that he said?
All 332?
No, I'm just like, like he said that in the background. He said this. He said, if you run probability calculations and find that there's a 10 in 304 chance you're going to find another planet that's truly like Earth, and he goes on, he says, one estimate is that there could be more than 1 billion trillion planets, by the way. So 1 billion trillion planets that could be out there. He goes, so let's factor that number into our probability equation. That still means that the odds of having any higher life supporting planet would be, okay, so if we're saying what are the odds of a planet like ours existing, are you ready for the number, Mark? Okay, remember, our number before of 1 billion continents with the dimes stacked to the moon was 1 part in 10,000 trillion. Okay? All right. Here's the number for those things to coalesce in the way that they have for the Earth to be here. You ready? Just take a breath.
Okay.
1 in a million trillion.
I think a CD player's skipping somewhere.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right? Dude, isn't that crazy?
And here I am worried about how I'm going to use my vacation days this year.
But no,
this is going on.
But that's the thing though. But that's the level of care needed for us to be here is astounding. And that's okay. So we look at, okay, the way the universe functions. We look at our galaxy. We look at the Earth. But man, I'll tell you what else. Something we should look at. We're saying, why do we believe in a God that we can't see? Let's look at us for a second here. Let's look at what happens in our hearts and our minds. All right. There's this thing. We've talked about C.S. Lewis every now and then. Mm-hmm. There's a thing that says.
I've been thinking about him as you've been talking about this because the first Narnia book, The Magician's Nephew, there's this really beautiful account of Aslan, who is God in the series,
right,
of him creating the world. Mm-hmm. And it's a treat. If you want to treat yourself.
I love it. Where he's like skipping around and things are springing up.
Yeah. There's just this like light in the void. And it's just really cool. If you're looking for something fun to do and you're like thinking about the universe, read that.
Yeah. Well, but the thing that made Lewis become a Christian, because he was an atheist before.
I did not know that.
Oh, yeah. The thing that he couldn't get past, it began to haunt him at night. So you got his friends, most notably famous author Tolkien was one of the people instrumental in his coming to faith. Mm-hmm. Was he couldn't answer what he called the problem of should. In other words, he couldn't explain why people believe that there is a should. Okay, so that is to say, like, people might disagree about what the should be, but everybody's got one, right? So
like I should do this.
Yeah, you should do this. You should do that. Okay. And so he said this thing that, like, it made him just sort of go, there has to be a higher standard than me if I'm appealing to it constantly, even though I don't know what it is, right? So somebody, if we could put contemporary language, somebody cuts me off in traffic, I say, you shouldn't have done that if I'm being gracious, right? Where did I get that should from? Now, cultures disagree about what the shoulds are, but everybody's got this thing that they're appealing to. Life should be this way. It should be that way. And it's almost as though there's something just stamped on us as human beings, because we've never known utopia. We've never known life without frustrations or difficulties. So what are we appealing to exactly? But we all do it. It's as though there's this thing that's stamped on us as human beings, just in terms of how we exist, where we appeal to something greater than ourselves. And there's no way to account for that unless there's a higher law that we've been programmed for. You see what I'm saying? Like, if it's just something that we invented, it makes no sense that we would hold it with the authority that we do. But we do. All of us do it. And so here's why I bring all this stuff up. Okay, so we said, okay, listen, why do Christians believe in a God they can't see? And what I keep saying is, I think God is very visible in creation. And so we looked at Romans, where Paul said that God's qualities are present within creation. He's revealed who he is within what we can see. All right. So if we were just to review what I've been kind of monologuing about for the last, I don't know how long it's been. Let me just give you really, really quick 5 things that I think we see about God based on that stuff. Ready? And you tell me if this sounds like the God of the Bible or not. Number 1, that it's unreasonable to believe that the universe exists by chance. It must have a creator who's eternal. If everything has to have a beginning, no matter how far you take it back, there has to be something, like, you can't get away from if there's movement, you have to cut back to the first mover who is not moved. Like, it always goes back to that. All right. Second thing, this creator would have to possess power and knowledge that we can't fathom. In order to have like that kind of specific knowledge and to design things that are able to exist in the way that they are. I mean, like, you keep coming back to and talking about, I can't put my head around that number.
Yeah.
Yes, and amen. This creator would have to be, in addition to eternal, would have to be, I dare say, omnipotent, meaning without limit in power, and omniscient, meaning without limit in knowledge. I mean, you would have to be. Okay. Well, that's starting to sound a little bit familiar. Well, we could continue. This creator would have to be, and here's a big one, Mark, would have to be immaterial or spirit, since they existed before the physical world.
Huh. Okay.
Right? I mean, if matter is a created thing, this creator would have to be bigger than that. And so it would be wrong if I can't touch God, that means God doesn't exist. What you're basically saying is, if I can't see the artist in the painting, and I'm living in the painting must not exist.
Ooh.
Right?
Ooh.
Yeah. Okay, so this creator would have to be spirit. All right. 4, let's just chew, okay? Given the meticulous details needed to create and maintain life, it's highly likely this creator cares about us.
Huh.
I mean, really, this can't be a thing of deism where God on aloof just created things to see if he could and then left it. No, there's so much involved in the maintenance of the earth, our lives, where we exist in the sum of the universe. It doesn't make sense to say that God wouldn't care. He would absolutely have to. He'd have to care about us because of how much goes into us being here. He would, I dare say, have to love us, which sounds like the God of the Bible. And then here's the last part. Okay, if there's this moral law that's stamped on us, this should, it's fair to say this creator might expect something of us. In other words, he cares about how we live our lives and what happens in them. That he would be just. And I would say that sounds a lot like the God of the Bible. And so when we have this thing and we say, all right, you know what? There's no evidence for the existence of God. You know what I always want to ask? Like, I was talking with a guy who's an atheist a couple weeks ago, and he said, I know there's no God, but even if there was, I wouldn't follow him. And that's an interesting thing, isn't it? And as we sort of peel it back, well, he's angry with how some things have happened in his life, in the world. And so, I would just want to ask my atheist or agnostic friend, as they're saying, there's no evidence for the existence of God, I would just want to ask, is there any part of you that wants there to not be a God? Hey, is there any part of you that's angry? Those are things that we can talk through. Those are things that the God I believe in, who's good, I think he can heal. I think he can meet you where you are. But let's just really quick, as we approach this conversation, let's just go, hey, you know what? Maybe there's more to my answer on this than there's no evidence. No, I think the evidence is really good. It's what's behind it with you not wanting to receive it. That would be what I would be curious to know.
That probably needs to be an episode all on its own.
Atheism?
Or even just the concept that what we believe about God is greatly shaped by our own experiences.
Yeah. Yeah. Good and bad. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I've always heard it in the terms of, you know, if God is our heavenly Father, then our experiences with our earthly father or any leader in our lives and how they've succeeded or failed, or the way that they taught us or led us, they lead us into believing what we believe. And if that was a bad experience, then I definitely don't want something that I can't see running my life.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it reminds me of the person that I could see.
Yeah.
Or the thing that I went through. Hey, how many people, you know, and I'm not judging, I'm just saying, how many people, they were taught a view of God that it's not the Bible, it was just simple, and they're not even quite sure where they picked it up, you know, maybe Sunday school or whatever, and they were taught that God would always take care of them, and how they interpreted that was that nothing bad would ever happen. And then something bad really did happen. And they felt betrayed by God, and they felt let down, and here's this faith that I had, and it doesn't hold, you know, salt to the experience that I've had. God can't be good then, because I had this happen. God can't be who I thought that he was, because I had that happen. And that's a whole other episode in terms of why could God allow evil and suffering if he's good and all powerful? For sure, that's a whole other question. But is it possible that, you know, our own hurts could influence whether or not there is a God, or whether or not we want there to be a God?
Well, thank you for going on this journey with us today. It really is important to never stop asking questions.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're really simple, fun questions, and other times they're hard, like this one. They need discernment. And if you have a question for us, maybe we've raised more questions than we've answered today, remember to send your questions to the email. It's podcast@wearethebridge.org. And that being said, we're excited to hear your questions, but that can't replace being a part of the local church body.
Yeah.
If you do enjoy the show, help us get the word out by leaving a rating wherever you get your podcasts. Again, thanks for listening. There was one thing that you said that we created the sun classification system. Why on earth is our sun class G?
There are just other suns they really like more.
Where it's like,
have you seen that sun on Triton 3?
We've got a class A sun. You know why it's class A? Because it's ours. It gave us the ability to classify suns. No. Class G. It's worse than F. F is the worst letter grade you can get. Yeah, we got a class G. Which I would then, as a father who can make dad jokes, well, that's the class God son. Because God put it there.
It's a G. Yeah.
The original.
The OG. The OG G.